Right, just give me a moment. I just need a moment to be ready. It was ready, but just a couple of technical things to attend to. Okay, that seems to be working. If you're in the room now, you're welcome to type in questions. It was ready, but just a couple of technical things to attend to. Okay, that's right. So yeah, welcome everybody. I'm going to be starting very soon. I'm just going to type a message. Welcome to Ask Questions. And I just need a moment to be totally ready. Okay, things seem to be working. Yeah, there's just a slight lag in the recording, but it seems good enough that we can get started. Just one moment. And yeah, you can see me, so that's excellent. All right. I've just got a minor issue with this screen, and I'll just try and fix that, and then we can begin. It's funny, last week was my first time to do the live streaming, and it was actually, everything was set up better. This week I should be finding it easier, but I'm actually finding it harder with the technology. I'm just cut off a little bit on this right hand side, and I'm not too sure why it is doing that. Here we go, I found the fix. Okay, so what I'm going to do is start now. I just want to check that the live stream's working, and then I'm definitely starting. Sorry for being a little bit late today. Okay, it seems like I got 3 people watching. I can't see anybody asking questions. I would encourage you to ask questions, because I will kind of answer them in the order that they come in. I think that's fair. You can ask any questions related to the speaking test, especially the topics that I'm going to be talking about. So let's have a look what we're going to do today. Okay, so in today's lesson, what I want to do is start off by reviewing what we were working on last week. And if you find the review interesting and it's your first time, you could go back and look at last week's live stream. So that's how we're going to start, reviewing last week. Then I'm going to look at the common question types for part 1. What are some of the most common questions, so that you can prepare for those. You can prepare vocabulary, and you can practice to answer those types of questions. Things like, what do you like, what don't you like, how often do you in the future. Then I want to move on and talk a bit about current topics that are in the test, so that you can be prepared for some of those. Just thought I'd add my picture on over here, but there we go. Yeah, current topics that are in the test, because if you know some of the topics, it's going to, again, you could prepare a vocabulary, and it'll be easier to talk about things if you've already thought about them. And then I'll try and answer as many questions as I can from the audience, so it's a good opportunity for you to get some answers from an ex-examiner about what really happens in the test, because sometimes there's a bit of misinformation. So you're most welcome to ask me any questions related to the speaking test, particularly the topics that I'm teaching today, and I'll favour those kinds of questions. And then if I don't answer your question during the live session, I'll do it after the live session. So make sure you type in your questions. I think that will help a lot. Okay, so what we're going to do is begin with a review of last week. And last week I'm talking about how you can give longer answers, and I've actually got this video on my YouTube channel. You could look for that if you find this useful, if you find it helpful to learn about how to give longer answers in your IELTS speaking test. By the way, when I'm talking about topics and questions, what do I mean? So this is what I mean by a topic. Let's talk about food. So food is a topic, and then we can have, so and the examiner always starts off by introducing the topic, right? So they'll say, let's talk about food, and then the book. If you've taken a test, you've seen the examiner read from a book. They have scripted down 4 questions per topic, and so underneath this, let's talk about food, that's where I'm talking about the questions. So we've got what kind of food do you like? That's what I mean by a question. And then I even would say that's a liking question. There's lots of questions about what you like in the test. More than 20% of the questions are about what you like, and a lot about what you don't like as well. So it makes sense to be prepared to talk about liking questions, right? Because that's a quarter of part 1 of the test. So if you are well prepared to answer those questions, and you build up some vocabulary, then you're going to find it, I don't want to say easy, but easier, let's say. So last week we were looking at the topic of food, and then the question of what kind of food do you like, and we had some strategies, 5 strategies for giving longer answers. And I just thought I will start off by quickly summarizing that, and in case somebody's here that wants a review or didn't see that. But as I said, if you want to look at that in more detail, go and watch this video. It's not made by me. I've actually got, this is a kind of a professional video that I made, and this is part of a course that I have that I'll talk about later. I've got a new speaking course to help students that I've just released in 2023. So the first strategy I extended for extending answers in part 1, but it could also be in other parts of the test. So we have the question, right? What kind of food do you like? One way to give an extended answer is don't just talk about one thing, like, oh, I like pizza. You could talk about 3 different kinds of food that you like. I've got food from different countries, but it could be different. You could talk about seafood, chicken, and vegetarian dishes if you want. And we can use that strategy for other liking questions too. What kind of movies do you like? Maybe you like detective stories, maybe you like drama, maybe you like comedies. So it's a really effective strategy for giving longer answers, and practice it, right? Practice these things that I'm showing you. Just it's not just theoretical, right? If you go to your test without practicing the strategies, it may not go well. So practice them. Alright, and then the next strategy I talked about was general to specific. So what that is instead of having 3 different kinds of food, we could have a general kind seafood, and then we can be a bit more specific, Japanese seafood, and then down to sashimi. And again, we could do that with other topics. Back to the movies, we could talk about comedies, romantic comedies, and then you could give maybe an example, the Wedding Singer or something like that. Alright, the third one I introduced was to say it depends, and then sort of go in 2 directions. The 2 directions I used was if I'm on my own and getting something quick like McDonald's, and then the next one was if I'm out with friends, I'd rather have exotic food such as Thai food or Indian food. Okay, I kind of feel you want to see my face again. There I am, because it's a live stream. It's quite nice to see the person presenting. Okay, then on to our next strategy, giving a concession. So covers it. I don't want to cover that delicious steak. Yeah, giving a concession, and so we sort of have a main idea, and then we give a concession. So I talked about eating a lot of steak and sirloins, which is a particular cut of steak, and then some sort of contradictory statement against that about it not being all that healthy. So that's another useful way to answer questions. And then the last strategy, which is really useful for questions that you don't like. So you might get a question you don't like the topic. It might be a kind of out of left field, an unexpected topic, something that you can't talk about well. Then this strategy is great. And with this one, you can see it on the screen. To be honest, I'm keen on many types of food, so it's hard to answer this question. So far I haven't really given any response to the actual question, right? But I guess that if I had to choose one, then I'd go for something like pizza. Now, you could memorize all of this, and that's what I mean about practice. Well, maybe not. You'd have to change the word food. So let's just underline that. But so sometimes students want templates, or they want to memorize stuff. You could memorize all of this. That would work equally well with the movies topic. To be honest, I'm keen on many types of movies, so it is hard to answer this question. But if I had to choose one, then I'd go for something like comedies, or The Wedding Singer, or whatever it is. So really useful strategy, really useful in part 3. Part 3 in particular is challenging when it comes to the questions, because the examiner can make their own questions, so we can't know in advance like part 1 and part 2. Let's be honest, we can know most of the questions for part 1 and 2 of the test. They get leaked. Students take tests and they share the questions with others, so we can prepare really well for part 1 and 2 of the test by knowing what the topics are, even knowing what some of the questions are. But part 3 can be a bit of a mystery, so you might just get that question out of where's my hand, out of left field. I don't know if that's left or right on your screen. So a question out of left field means it's unexpected. Don't know quite where that expression comes from. Maybe it's baseball, left field. I'm not sure. If somebody knows, they could type that in the in the comments. That would be interesting to know, or you could Google it. I can't Google it because I'm teaching you guys. Maybe I will when I finish. What an exciting thought for after this class. I can Google that and find out what that is. I might use ChatGPT. I might even show you ChatGPT later this lesson. Okay, let's move on. So that's the summary. That's all I want to say about that. If anyone's got a question about those strategies, write it in the chat real quick. Okay, we've got some people in there now. So let's see. Welcome everybody. And Shivani's asking, how can we improve vocabulary? Yeah, I am going to be talking quite a bit about vocabulary today. And it's important. Having the right words is important for your vocabulary score, obviously, but also for your fluency, right? And we have different kinds of words. Let me just put myself back on the screen. We have different kinds of words. We have there's fluency, right? And where does fluency come from? That comes from words that are in our active vocabulary, right? Ready, your brain can easily access them. That's your active vocabulary. And then I guess it's called passive vocabulary or something. We have another set of words that we kind of have to dig to find them. So what you want to do is have lots of words in your active vocabulary that can increase your score, but also help your fluency because you have the right words at the right time to answer things. Okay, and I'm looking over here because I have two screens. We've got a couple of good afternoons. Yeah, good afternoon to you in Vietnam. I guess people are from all different parts, so it might be morning where you are. So yeah, interesting. Okay, let's keep moving on. So I will answer this question about vocabulary sort of multiple points today, just so that you know. There'll be quite a lot of vocabulary. Then let's move on to the next thing. So one of the things we want to prepare and work on are those extension strategies I just told you, and then another one is the questions, common questions that are in the test. And I already told you about the I'll cover myself there, the liking question, liking, disliking. Those are really common questions, and I just released this video yesterday, and it's kind of interesting. What I did is I looked, I'll show you what I did. I found the top 3 questions for part 1 of the test, and I'll show you how. Just one moment. So what I did is I just, like I have on my website, if you go to my website, IELTSanswers.com, I've got all the questions that and topics that my students have told me about that they've experienced in the test this year. And so I've got all these topics, right? Advertising, art, birthdays, and then I've got questions. So what I did is I sort of wondered, I know the liking questions are popular, so I can go like this, like, and I can go down and I can see, wow, there's a lot of liking questions. Almost every topic has a liking question, and sometimes 2 and sometimes none, okay? Or a disliking question here too. Some of these topics are hard too. Jewelry, that's a difficult topic. I want to talk more about difficult topics later, but one of the things you should be doing is looking at topics and trying to identify topics that might be problematic, right? Topics that you may need to do some extra preparation for. Jewelry's since we're on this, is a prime example. For one thing, it's uncountable, so you can't say I have 2 jewelries. You'd have to say pieces of jewelry. So you got to know that jewelry is uncountable. And then what might happen and it's to do with fluency and vocabulary. You get a question in the test, maybe like, have you ever bought someone jewelry as a gift? And you go to answer it, and then you suddenly realize you don't have the vocabulary for earrings, let's say. And so what do you do then? So I think it's a good idea to be looking at the topics, but also the questions. So if there's so many liking and disliking questions, doesn't it make sense to practice that? To me it does. Like, I can almost guarantee you're going to get a question about what you like or don't like in your test, because you're going to get about 11 questions in part 1. 25% of the questions are about what you like, what you don't like. So that means on average you're going to get about 3 or 4 liking, disliking questions. You know that, so it makes sense to prepare this in advance, right? Jewelry, you might get this question, but the probability's not so high. It's about, let's see, we've got about 30 topics, and you're going to get 3 topics in your test, so you've got about a 10% chance, 1 in 10, of getting this topic jewelry. So how much time do you want to spend on a topic that you've got a 10% chance of getting? Not as much, I think, as preparing for liking, disliking questions, which you're going to get 3 or 4 of. And if you're prepared for liking, disliking questions, you can probably sort of have a go at, even you don't have a lot of vocabulary for jewelry, even as a bit of I don't like this topic, you can probably still deal with it, right? Because you've got your extending strategies, you've got your, or you will have your liking vocabulary. So you could probably still answer some of these. You could use the avoiding strategy. Gosh, that's a tricky question because I'm not really into vocabulary, not really into good phrase for discussing liking. But there's some other phrases that are really common too. So let me just see if I can remember. I was just doing the video yesterday. So there's have you ever? Mr. V, have you ever? And there's quite a lot of those, 7 of those, right? Have you ever visited an art gallery? So you need to be able to answer those questions. And what was the other one? It was something like how often? Yeah, how often? How often do you use a computer? 12 questions. So you want to build up vocabulary for common question types. And maybe sentence patterns even. So those are some of the common ones in that video, right? If I go back to the video, in this video I've got the liking and those 2 other questions that I showed you, and then there's a couple of other question types that are really common that I want to show you now as well. So just one moment. Yeah, this is a better view. So let me show you what they are. So one of them is when you were a child. This is a really common question. If you go onto my page and searched for that, there's I think about at least 7 questions asking about when you were a child. So you should practice that. Sometimes for older people like myself, that's hard because I haven't been a child for so long, so it's harder to think back. If you're a teenager, then it's not so difficult, right? It's not too long ago, right? So we should be prepared for that, and we might be talking about our mothers or fathers or something like that. So it brings me to this point: why prepare question types? And I've kind of answered this already. There's fewer question types than topics. I've kind of identified about 8, maybe there's 10 common types of questions. I've got a couple of videos on that, and so you could prepare these question types. Another thing, if you're not taking a test for a long time, it might not make sense to work on the topics too much. And the reason for that is, let me just add my face again, my pretty face. The reason is the topics change, right? So now we've got jewelry in the test. A couple of quarters later, it'll be out. And at the moment, we've got things like advertising. I think that'll be gone in May. So if you're May, there'll be new questions. So the new questions come in January, May, and September. So advertising's from last year, the last quarter of 2002. So it'll be gone after May. If your test's after May, there's no point working on advertising. You can work on some of the other newer ones like jewelry and chocolate, but by September they'll be gone. So if your test's a long way away, especially, work on the question types because they're going to stay the same. If we look at the full 8 question types, and I've got a couple more to add, 80% of the questions. So you can be ready for 80% of the types of questions that are going to be asked. You can prepare language for question types. So liking questions, prepare liking language, keen on, fond of, big fan of. I'm going to show you more vocabulary in a minute. Reduce brain loading. So what am I talking about here? Try and think of your brain being a bit like a computer. If you're prepared for the question types, if you're well prepared to answer questions about what you like, what you don't like when you were a child, in the future, and then you get a challenging topic like jewelry, your brain loading is going to be a little bit less. How can I explain this? If you hadn't thought about the question types, when you get the question, you've got to formulate how to respond to the question as well as the topic. If you've already formulated how to respond to the question, you've only got to deal with the topic. So that's going to make it easier on your brain to function and give you the response that you need. Right? The examiner's question comes in an ear, goes to your brain, and your brain has to figure out how to answer it. Content words. Made this a while back. Focus on content words. I can't quite remember what that was, but I think what it is, if you've kind of built up some structures for answering question types, then you just need to focus on what goes into these sort of gaps. So if it's like this one up here, and we've already got this structure, so we just fill in the gaps. It's easier. Well, my mother gave me a lot of vegetables because she wanted me to be healthy. However, I didn't really like them. So we can build up these kind of templates or structures and practice them with different topics so that the structures become second nature. So they're in our active brains. Remember I was talking about the passive and active. I think this is right. They also talk about sight language and reading. They talk about sight language, words that you see and you just instantly know. So I think when we're speaking, we have certain words that just come out without any effort, and other words that we've really got to rack our brains and search for, like maybe earrings. So keen on could be something comes out really quickly, and then I've got to think about earrings, right? All right. So I think that's what I was thinking of when I wrote that. So let's look at a couple of answers. What sort of food did you eat when you were a child? That I kind of already answered that one. And then we also have questions about the future. This is another really common question, and so you're going to need future tense, I suppose, will and going to, although we can talk about the future using other tenses as well. I know that's kind of weird. It's a weird thing in English that we have tenses, but then we have aspects. and sometimes it's good to distinguish. So future tense is will and going to, but we can also talk about the future aspect, and we can use different tenses, like I'm going to New Zealand next year. That's I am going. So I think that's present continuous tense. I'm going to New Zealand next year. Future tense would be I'm going to go. I'm going to go to New Zealand next year. So going to go, it's going to plus verb. When we just got verb ing, that's continuous tense. Alright, so you can sort of, you can't see, you can almost see the answer on the screen to that question. I'll read it out for you. So what would you like to try any new kind of food in the future? Well, to be honest, I don't really have a clear plan, but I guess that if I had a chance, I would like to try Indian curries because I'm really into spicy food and it seems like something I would enjoy. And we could change the topic, food, to something else, let's say movies again, and we could still use this template. So it could be something like, well, to be honest, I don't really have a clear plan, but I guess if I had a chance, I would like to, I don't know, rewatch Titanic. Rewatch the movie Titanic. I was at the cinema the other day and I saw Titanic, and I thought, oh wow, they've made a new Titanic movie. But if I'm not mistaken, I think they're just recycling the old one. They're just, I think they said 25th anniversary or something. And that made me think, wow, I'm getting old. Maybe it's 25th anniversary of Titanic. I was in university studying master degree when that was on. So yeah, I could say I would like to re-watch the Titanic because I'm really into romantic comedies. Let's say romantic comedies. What's wrong with re-watch? Is it hyphenated? Maybe it is. So if you've got the template, if you've practiced this kind of question and how to structure your answer, it's a lot easier, right? You just have to drop in the topic specific language, and the other words can stay the same. It could be music, it could be sports. Would you like to try any new kinds of sports in the future? Well, to be honest, I don't really have a clear plan, but I guess if I had a chance, I would like to go skiing because I've always wanted to try it. So we can reuse these structures. Now, we want to build up structures, but we also want to build up language. It would also be good to build up some language for discussing these. So there's a few ideas on your screen if we've got a question about liking. Why can I not move myself up? There we go. Yep. And we need this down a little bit. It's not okay. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to see the bottom. So keen on, big fan of, really into, makes my day, lights up my life. I'm a die-hard fan of. I'm a die-hard fan of romantic comedies. It's making me think of Bruce Willis for some reason. The Die Hard movies, really good. Heard he's got some problems at the moment. That's sad. It doesn't light up my life. So what happens? Let me tell you kind of practical reality. I have students that I teach regularly, and I introduce these to them, and I tell them your part 1 is okay in terms of fluency, but it's lacking vocabulary. You can't get to 7 because you don't have enough high-level vocabulary, right? It's a requirement for 7. You can think of the grades like this. A 6 is somebody who does nothing wrong, nothing major wrong. Easy to understand, can talk about basic topics without any problems. But sometimes when they get into some of the more specific topics, it's harder. But anyway, you need some high-level language, especially idiomatic language. and sometimes people use 0 in the part 1, and I'm sorry, you could make 0 mistakes, but if you don't have any high level language at all, that's a 6. For a 7, you must show me some talent. So I give people these lists and I tell them you need to practice, but they don't practice using these, and then the next lesson it's the same. The fluency's fine, but they didn't use any of these words, not even one. So I asked them, what food do you like, and I just hear back the word like. Not great for 2 reasons. One, you need to show paraphrase to get to band 7. It's another requirement, ability to paraphrase words. And then secondly, there's no high level vocabulary. I can't give 7. It's a 6. So the point I want to make is that just me showing you these words is not enough. If you want to make progress in your test, you need to get a list like this and internalize it, put it into your active vocabulary, and it needs to come out fluently without any effort in the test. If you don't do that, if you just look at it once and go into your test, you're either not going to use it, or you're going to need to hesitate to think of that, like, oh, what was that phrase again? Keen on, and that delay results in a lowering of your fluency. And sometimes there's this trade-off between being fluent, speaking at a good speed, and having high-level vocabulary. The trade-off is that sometimes you have to hesitate to get the higher-level vocabulary. So for me, you need to do the vocabulary work before you go into your test. You need to learn some, and you need to practice using it to answer questions so that it comes out effortlessly in your test. So for some reason, like, students like big lists of vocabulary. They like to think that, oh, I've got 1,000 new words. But it doesn't really work like that. Building vocabulary is a long-term process, and even people say we don't learn vocabulary, we acquire it. We just kind of get it as we go along. You can learn it and you can sort of force it, but I think that requires you to do a lot of repetition, right, and practice so that it's coming out, so that it's in your active vocabulary. So there's a few phrases. If you've got any other good ones, you could put them in the comments if you want to. Alright, let's go on to disliking vocabulary. Have a look at that, and let me just check the stream for a minute. So a couple more people, good afternoon, and oh, somebody says I'm the best mentor. How nice. Thank you. I'm going to come back on the camera. You're the best student. Yeah, no, that's good. Keep comments coming, especially I'd quite like some questions. I'd like to be able to take some questions. Surely somebody's got questions. You can watch videos like this passively. This is a live video, right? You can watch them passively. Here's a chance to be active and ask me questions. I would like the challenge of answering difficult questions. I don't care how hard they are. I'm not really that keen on grammar questions, though. Don't ask me too many grammar questions, but ask me questions about the mechanics of the test and what's the examiner thinking. Try and get into the mindset of the examiner. Ooh, you see how I have to delay and think of the word mindset, so that lowers my fluency, and then out comes a great word, but it's not ideal. I should have prepared that word mindset before this lesson. I should have known and predicted I would use it. Okay, so if we dislike something, then we can say we detest it. I detest people who something, I don't know. I detest seafood. I don't like seafood. That's true. And then the next one, can't stand. Next one, can't stand. If something you really don't like, you can't stand it. idiomatic expression helps you to get to 7. Not my cup of tea. I had one student who took a test. I thought it was touch and go. She needed 7. I thought it was touch and go. I thought she'd probably get 6.5, like my honest opinion. When she came out of the test room later, I saw her and I said, how did it go? And she said, the examiner laughed a couple of times. She said, is that good? And I said, well, I'm going to go full screen for this story. It's such a magnificent anecdote. I'm going to try and go full screen, bigger screen anyway. So back to the story. Yeah, so she said the examiner laughed a couple of times, and then, is it good or bad? And I said, oh, it could be either, actually, and just because the examiner's smiling and laughing doesn't mean you'll get a high score. But then I dug a bit deeper, and she told me that she used the phrase, simply not my cup of tea. And she said the examiner laughed, had a bit of a chuckle. And I said, I think that's a good sign. I think you're going to get 7. And you know what? She got 7. So that's a good thing, isn't it? Very pleasing when someone punches above their weight, when they do just maybe a little bit better than you think. And it doesn't always go that way. Sometimes the reverse happens. I think someone's going to get an 8 and they get 6.5. It's happened before. And then my question is, what on earth happened? Something must have really gone badly. And then, like, one common reason is nervousness can interfere with the brain, and it could possibly send someone who's really an 8 down to 6.5. Since we're on interesting stories, I had another student that happened to. I thought he was going to get 8. He got 6.5, and I was trying to figure out what went wrong. And eventually I found it. I asked him, what was your part 2 topic? And he said it was about 𝗧𝗂𝗵𝗺. And I'm like, huh? And he said 𝗧𝗂𝗵𝗺. Are you sure? Yes, 𝗧𝗂𝗵𝗺. Anyway, it turned out 𝗧𝗂𝗵𝗺 was neighbours. But unfortunate pronunciation killed him. Okay, so we want to build up our like-dislike language, right? Really important. And then there's a lot of questions about when you're a child, so it makes sense to build a little bit of vocabulary for that. Geez, my slides are ugly. Okay, so we could, what I've done here is I've just put a list of age groups of people. So this would be useful for talking about all sorts of ages of people. This would be useful for part 2, for the theme of people, for all the questions about people. This could be useful. I didn't put babies on there, and what comes before babies, I didn't put that either. So we got babies. I guess I assumed everybody knows what a baby is, and then about sort of age 2 to maybe 4 we can talk about toddlers, and toddlers are often going to kindergarten. So you could use the word toddler. What kind of food did you like? Well, when I was a toddler, I absolutely adored vegetables. However, later as a teenager, I really couldn't stand them. And then a youngster, like a young person, it doesn't seem totally natural to me, that word, but it is a word and you could use it. Teenagers, sometimes people don't understand what teenagers are. It's quite easy, really. It's the 13 to 19. So not a 12, because that doesn't end in teen. It's all those ages that end in teen. And then an adolescent is sort of like I want to say young adult, or just before being a young adult, somewhere around that sort of time. 20-something. So somebody aged 25 is a 20-something or a 30-something. Middle age. This is a bit vague. What age exactly is middle age? And I think it shifts. When you're a child, your parents are middle-aged, even if they're 30 or something. But when you get older, when you get to my age, your perception shifts, and middle age seems a lot older. And then people are living longer, not older. They're living longer. So it's a little bit hard to define, but maybe it's something like somewhere around the age of, well, let's say people live to 80 on average, so I guess it's about 40, 50, that sort of thing. And then sort of 60 plus, you become a senior citizen and maybe you retire and those sorts of things. So we should prepare language for talking about other children, or when we, well, for part one, when we were a child, because that's a common question type, and there's like there's about 7 questions about children out of 30 topics. So that means there's a fairly good chance you'll get one question about when you were a child. What sort of movies did you like when you were a child? Movies is not in the test. What sort of art? That'd be a weird question. No, what sort of art did you like? That's not a real question. There are some questions though when you were a child. Let's look at one then. Now somebody's sitting there and they're like, oh, you said there's lots of questions about that, but I don't believe you. Somebody didn't type that, but they were thinking it. So I'm going to address that, and let's see, when you were a child. Housework. Did you do housework when you were a child? We've got 7 in total. Library. Did you go to the library when you were a child? Let's see if we can answer that question for the previous topic. I'm kind of lost what I'm doing about this when you were a child. I suppose I'd be saying, well, when I was a youngster, I just liked to read comics. I was keen on comics. Whereas when I became an adolescent, I grew quite fond of detective stories. Okay, so I have proven to you there are those questions. You can go yourself, just search other websites as well for current questions. Maybe I missed a couple. It could well be. Okay, and then there's questions about the future. So we want to have some language. I find these are probably the ones that trip people up the most, cause people the most problems, because it can be quite challenging to talk about the future sometimes. So we can have some words like predict, to make a prediction, envisage. Envisage is kind of sort of imagining things. And then the metaverse, this is something sort of new. Do you understand it? I sort of understand it. It's a bit like virtual reality, I suppose. It's like we can immerse ourselves fully into an artificial world or something like that. So it could be something that's interesting to talk about. And then if you are preparing for these topics, then you can then go to the questions. You could practice. So if we got future, I've only got 4 questions now. Will you cook more in the future? Well, I could envisage that I probably will, because I'm going to go to the UK and study for a master's degree. So I'll probably have to live alone and cook for myself. Right, so you could look at that one. Do you think you will do more or less housework in the future? Well, I know what I want to say for that one. I hope it's less. I hope the metaverse, I'm going to enter the metaverse, and I imagine in the metaverse there won't be a lot of housework to do. Well, actually, thinking about technology, maybe my answer could be that I think I'll do less, and that's because of robots. Maybe I might be able to talk about robots. That was a topic last year. So yeah, you could look at some of these topics. Is there any language you would like to learn in the future? Yeah, there's a few languages. Probably the next language, I don't say I want to learn it really well. I wouldn't mind to learn Vietnamese, because I have students in Vietnam, and also my books are published like hardback in Vietnam. So and I'd like to go to Vietnam this year, so that would be cool. I'd love to learn Vietnamese. reality is, this could be sort of concession strategy. I don't think I really have a lot of time to put into it, and language learning requires a lot of time. I think you'll agree. Let me just look at questions because the time is drawing near. Oh yeah, I've got a hello from Robert Madrigal, my good friend Bobby in Taipei. Hope you're still online, Bobby, and hi to you. I'm well overdue to get in touch with Bobby and lots of other people, and I'm starting to think my live streams might be the only opportunity for that. So let me just come on the camera. And hi Bobby, hope you're doing well in Wugu. Best wishes to you and everybody else there. Maybe one day we can do a live stream where you guys come on as well. That would be interesting. So that's very nice. And let's see, so we've got 𝗬𝗂𝗶𝗺𝗲𝗁 old. I'm not sure the question. It's old in question mark. Yeah, if you do have a question, maybe type that back in. I'm not sure. And then some nice comments from Krisno. Strategically, Mike is the best. That's right. Strategically, I'm the best strategy teacher. That could well be true. I mean, I don't really know, but I don't really notice a lot of other teachers that really have strategies like I do for the speaking test. I'm not saying that there's no one else that doesn't, because I don't really know. I haven't really researched it or anything. But a lot of the teachers tend to focus on vocabulary and maybe sentence structures and grammar and those sorts of things. I tend to focus a lot on strategies. How can you approach things and breaking things down step by step. My background's in strategy. My master degree is what is it again? It's a Master of Management majoring in strategy. So I've taken lots of courses in business strategy, and then after that I entered the teaching world, and I think that still affects me, right? I approach teaching from a strategic point of view, and I also try and imagine that I'm a student. If I'm a student learning a language or taking a test, what would I do to enhance my ability to score well? All right. So I'm going to have to wrap things up. We've got about 5 minutes, so I've got to think of any important things I want to say. Oh yeah, we can do quite a bit in 5 minutes. I know I've waffled a bit. That's alright too though, right? So I've talked a lot about topics, and this is what I mean by topic, the ones in bold. Let's discuss where you live. Let's talk about friends, liking. So that, sorry, on the left hand side the topics are there, and then question types are shown in red. Those are the questions. So that's probably, I should have shown you that before, but if you're still a bit confused about topics and question types, that's what I mean. For the current questions that are in the test, I've got YouTube videos, this like the thumbnail for one about libraries. You could go and watch those if you wanted to. What I do in those is I give the questions and model answers and then some vocabulary suggestions, and that's a good thing for passive learning. Just sit there, grab your dinner, grab your bowl of cereal, and watch these videos. It could be quite useful for you. So I've got one on all of the topics that I noticed that are new for this year. So they're going to be in the test until September. So if you're taking a test before September, these videos are worth watching. Another one about music. Okay, so back to a question earlier about vocabulary and maybe about difficult topics. Flowers is not in the test now, but I remember when it was, and when it was or when it were, but I remember when it were or was. So what I want to say is, it caused people a lot of trouble, and a lot of people would tell me this: sorry, I don't know the names of any flowers. They did this in mock tests with me, right? So in mock tests, that's the comment I'd get. Oh, I don't know anything about flowers. I don't know the names of any flowers. And I said, you must know some, roses, lilies. Oh, yeah, I know roses, I know lilies. But anyway, there was an absence of vocabulary, and so this is what I shared with people. If you identify a topic like flowers that you think you're going to struggle with, you could learn some vocabulary. And so I've got here daffodils. That's a type of flower. You don't even need to know what they look like. It's certainly not what you're seeing on the right hand side. That's something else. But they do have yellow flowers and long green stems. So you might not know the word stem. That's, if you look at the picture, let's go top to bottom. I think you know flowers, you probably know leaves. Stem is the kind of, how would you describe that? It's the thing that holds everything. It's the, you see, stem, if you don't know the word stem, it could be difficult I couldn't think of a good way to paraphrase that. It's almost like the body of the flower or something, and then the roots are under the ground. So you could do a bit of work like that on vocabulary. And another question that caused trouble, it's not on the test now, what's your favorite color? People really struggle with that, and it seems like an easy question. I like blue because it's very nice. So it's actually quite a difficult question, even though you don't realize it, and it's another reason why it's good to practice current questions. Here's a better answer. I'm a big fan of turquoise because it reminds me of the ocean, this sort of greeny blue color. I painted my home this color as it gives me a tranquil feeling of being by the ocean. So tranquil means peaceful, right? And if you bother to learn these two words, turquoise, this bluish green color, and tranquil, use these in your answers, not just for part one. If you get a part two question about a place you went, you could describe this beach and the turquoise color of the ocean and how it gave you a tranquil feeling and allowed you to chill out and totally de-stress. Alright, the other thing you really need to do if you're preparing for your test is prepare for these three starting topics. So what I mean by starting topic, these are the first topics that will appear in your test. Let me just shrink myself a bit. It's going to be your test is going to start with one of these topics: your work or study, either of those depending on your situation, your home. So questions about your home. Do you like your home? Is there anything you don't like? Is there anything you would like to change about your home? Or your hometown or the current place that you're living in. Now, you know you're going to get one of these topics, so prepare for them. And you know that you're going to get questions about what you like, what you don't like. So practice talking about what you like and what you don't like about your work or study, your home, your hometown, or the current place that you're living in. This could be the same one. And even if your hometown's different than where you're living now, if you can't talk about your hometown, well, just pretend that your hometown is where you live now. Easy. You can lie a little bit in the test as long as you're comfortable with it. It's just a speaking test. Alright, so that's really important. And then the reasons why I think you should prepare for those starting topics is you want to get off to a good start, especially if you're someone who could be nervous, who might feel under pressure during the test. Then you want to be able to prepare these topics so you get off to a good start and then your anxiety comes down. You want to make a positive first impression to the examiner. Wow, this guy's an 8. And you want to show fluency. You want to show to the examiner, hey, I can speak fluently. I can answer your questions with ease. And you may want to show some talent. maybe with vocabulary. If you know you're going to get a question about where you're living, you could prepare something for that. Think of something about where you're living that you could mention that has high-level vocabulary. I'm surrounded by a beautiful turquoise ocean. It's a really tranquil environment where I really enjoy chilling out or something. I don't know. It's just an idea. So how to prepare? I think you should build vocabulary for the common topics. If it's jewelry, then think if you're going to talk about earrings or a ring or a bracelet. If you're a lower level student, not necessarily, or if you've got a long time, write out some model answers. I don't mean like for every single question for a whole test, but you could just write out a few model answers, practice answering them, especially some answers to liking, disliking questions because they're so common, and then practice. If you do write out your model answers, maybe make sure you practice speaking them. Just writing is no good. It's funny this, but if you just write, it won't actually help you speak better. Well, it might a little bit, but really you have to speak out your model answers. You'll get more benefit. Now, if you're a higher level student, you might not bother to write out model answers. You might just look at questions and give model answers just verbally. That would be fine. That's helping you work on your speaking. That's helping you be more fluent, because if you get the same question in your test, it's going to be so much easier, right? Because you've already done it. It's like when you make a speech. If you rehearse it, if you practice saying it a few times, it comes out much better when you give the real speech than if it's just totally impromptu. You're just saying it for the first time. And unless you're a particularly talented speaker, some people can just do all that. You could read model answers. I've got them on my website, and you can watch the videos. So let me just finish by I just want to do one more thing, and then I'll look at if there's any questions and answer those. So all I wanted to show is if you're preparing for your test, have a look at my website, IELTSanswers.com. For the speaking test, I reckon I got most of the topics and questions on my website. So you can have a look. You can go to the topic, advertising. Do you like to watch advertisements on TV? You could practice answering it, or you could read my model answer. It's hidden, so you could look at it. Look for difficult topics. At the moment, I don't think there's too many nasty topics. I think art could be hard to talk about for some people. Dreams could be a little bit hard. Geography, do you even know what it is? You better make sure you know what geography is. Housework should be right. Jewelry could be difficult. Outer space and stars could be. Puzzles difficult. Do you even know the names of puzzles? You might have to think, right? We've got crossword puzzles, and we've got the Rubik's Cube, and we've got Sudoku, which is that numbers thing where you've got to get a line of numbers without repeating the number. So you should think about what puzzles you're familiar with or like or don't like. Singing, I wouldn't like that topic. I think that's alright. I think the rest are okay. Weather, common topic. That's a good one to bring out some high-level language. Okay, so there's that. I do have a speaking book, 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗲. It's about, I got it on sale. It's about $16 US or something like that. I have a speaking success course if you want to have a formal study with ebook, quizzes, group class online like this. I was going to talk about ChatGPT, but I think that's going to be another day. I wouldn't mind. Maybe next week. I'm still thinking what I'm going to do next week, but I might try and sneak something about ChatGPT in there, because I think that's an amazing tool that will be useful for a lot of people. Alright, so I will be online again this time next week. I'll just check now if there's any questions that I haven't answered that I can answer quickly, and then I'm looking to stop. Alright, so there is one. Can you explain what it means to show topic-specific vocabulary? Yeah, okay, so that's a really good question. I can answer that. I'll answer that by going back to that my website again, because I think we need to look at actual questions for me to answer that. Let's take chocolate then. Just one moment and I'll show you what's going on with this. Yeah, so let's take chocolate. So topic specific vocabulary would be language about chocolate. So we've got different kinds of chocolate, right? We've got dark chocolate, we've got milk chocolate, lighter in color, and then we've got white chocolate. So that's topic specific vocabulary. Maybe like delicious, scrumptious for the flavor. That could be still part of topic specific vocabulary. And you can build up some topic specific vocabulary, but also you could build up the I think what's more useful is the vocabulary about the question types, right? Like, because you're more likely to be able to use it, right? Especially the liking and disliking language. I can't emphasize enough how useful that is, not only in part 1 of your test, but also other parts. Part 2, you're often asked questions about what you like. Part 3, you're often asked questions about what people in general like. What sort of food do people in your country like? So for me, the liking, disliking language is the most useful. And then some of the language maybe for the 5 strategies is quite useful too, like avoidance. We can say, gosh, that's a tricky question. So tricky question, idiomatic language. So I think those are the most effective. And then the topic specific language is really great, but it's going to be harder, right? Because you don't know if you're going to get this topic of chocolate. So do you really want to invest a lot of your time learning some vocabulary about chocolate? So maybe not, but what you can do is just brainstorm, like I was just doing. If it's about computers, we could talk about laptop and maybe virtual reality. Maybe you're someone who likes to put on the glasses and get into that. Cooking. So what I'm saying is go through the topics and think what vocabulary you already know. Cooking, cuisine, various types of cuisine, aromatic, smells good. Think of what you already know rather than jumping onto Google and searching something like what's some cooking vocabulary or something. Alright, so focus on that mostly. Alright, I'm going to end the live stream there. Welcome to make comments in this video, and I can type answers later if you've got questions. And I'm going to run this every Saturday the same time, so put it on your calendar and share it with people that you know. Let's try and make this event a big success. Alright, so I'll say cheerio there. That's something my father would say, cheerio. Don't know why I thought of that just now, but it's another way of saying goodbye, cheerio. Cheerio everybody, and see you next week.